Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. As I was already introduced, I'm Mischa Peters. I'm responsible for everything technical at IntSights in EMEA from a pre-sales perspective. So before we start, and I cannot see everybody because of nice bright lights, who knows what the dark web is? All right, cool. Who's been, who's been on the dark web? All right, cool. Who's running a relay node? Okay. Who's running an exit node? 2, 3. All right, cool. Awesome. Just to understand where the knowledge is. So indeed, my talk is about what you should know about the dark web, because primarily there's a lot of information that you see on the news these days about the dark web, but there's a lot more on there. So that's what I would like to discuss. And on the end, there's a couple of things that I can show you what we do as IntSights to help you find all the things that you need to know. Because you cannot really defend if you don't know what's coming your way, right? If you don't know what's targeting you, if you're on someone's shit list, excuse my French, then you have no idea who you're defending against. You can of course have your firewall and it's doing its thing, but there's more than that could potentially harm your your organization. So just to then come back to the basis of it all and have a definition of what the clear, deep, and dark web is so that we are all on the same page. For us, or as the market has defined it, everything clear web is pretty much, or what people call what you can find with Google or your search engine of preference, DuckDuckGo, Startpage, whatever. But you don't need specific protocols beside HTTP for that. You don't need specific credentials in order to gain access to those sources. So that's what's considered the clear web. So things like social media to an extent, news sites, and so on, pastebin sites. Then there's a big part that is classified as deep web. And the deep web part is pretty much everything where you need a username and password for. So your Gmail account, if you have one, that's already considered deep web. And then there's a small portion below that that's considered the dark web, and you need a specific protocol for that. So either it be Tor or ITP or things like that in order to gain access to these sources. You still might need credentials in order to gain access. But initially you need a separate browser in this case in order to access those sources. So that's a little bit on the definition side. Now, the other thing, as soon as you start talking about dark web, it has a pretty bad reputation. Maybe not here, but the general public, so to say, considers the dark web to be a bad thing. And a lot of people agree that it should just disappear. It should be shut down. And then especially if you consider some of the statistics on Tor, for example, there's a lot of different sources out there. There's of course some peaks. I'm Dutch. The Dutch police force is very good in bringing down some marketplaces, which for us as a company is sometimes not a good thing. But anyway, sources come in, sources go. But if you then look at what the general public has to say about cyber criminals, is that it's also for most people the primary concern, and what that actually means and what the definition of that is, that can also always be debated, right? But for a lot of people, dark web, it's unknown. People don't know what's going on there. We need to have it gone. Cyber criminals are popping up everywhere. It's a rampant problem. So that's where we want to do something about. Now, the thing is, who's on Twitter? Really? Okay, more. So there's a really cool account called Zenzu Cyber, and they have some really nice quotes. At least I find them funny. Is that your adversary does not wait for you to finish patching, which is true, right? It doesn't really matter what's going on, what you're doing internally. They're not gonna listen to your project or your timeline or your priorities. If there's a hole, they'll find it. Also, the enemy does not check your risk register prior to attacking. So they're not going to see and look at HackerOne, for example, what's in scope of the bug bounty that's out there. No one cares. And then the last one, management will not provide additional budget based on ancient quotes on PowerPoint presentations, which is also true, right? If you want to convince your management about any type of investment that needs to be done, doesn't really matter what, you need to come with reasons why that it's a good thing instead of because I want it. That's never a good thing. People don't react to that well. So what's at stake? A lot of different things. And there's a lot of different things that you can already cover with the usual suspect from a security perspective, but as long as you know what's coming your way, you can be better protected, as I showed before. So software exploits is a problem. As soon as you see that you have a certain software running, either external, internal, there's an exploit on it, it's actively being used or being targeted, and you know about it, then you can prioritize your patching based on that. Data leakage. For a lot of companies, especially now in Europe, GDPR, hooray, it's a big problem. So the days that you can say, I didn't know that that data was out there are no longer there. They're over. You need to know what's going on instead of someone else telling you, hey, my credit card number is now there or my user account is now there. So that's also one of the things that's important. Brand reputation and impersonation is becoming more of a problem, not only from a sentiment side of things. So are people talking on Twitter bad about my brand? That's a whole different thing. But also from a perspective, is there a fake social media account that imitates my brand? And are they now getting access to user information or customer information? Or there's a mobile application that's in one of the application stores that is not ours, but it looks like ours, and people are downloading it. Who can remember the fake WhatsApp application that was there in, I think, the Google store? 2 years ago, there was a fake WhatsApp application, and I think it was based on a Unicode name, and it was downloaded 1 million times before it was shut down. So if you have the ability to have an application that looks like HSBC Bank or whatever bank, and you download it, or you're getting an email saying, hey, we have an update, and you're being redirected to an underground application store, you download it, you install it, and then all of a sudden, all your data and every single keystroke is now captured and being sent elsewhere. So it's a big problem. And if you don't know about it, you cannot protect against it. Phishing, not only from our customer's perspective, so the actual entity that we protect, but also their customers, or their vendors or partners that are being targeted by phishing more and more, and it's becoming more of a rampant problem than it already was. And of course, also executive members. I'm not going through the whole list, although I almost did. But supply chain attacks, we see that also from a phishing perspective. And we're seeing more and more executives being targeted via social media or targeted directly. So that's all at stake. And that's also one of the things that you can get from doing any type of monitoring on the dark web, for example. So what do we know about the dark web? What is actually being sold, or what type of stuff can you get on the dark web? And that's a question for you, so you can just shout it if you want. Or not. Then I'll show you. Not a problem. Because usually, and it actually works quite well, I've done this talk now a couple of times, and every time I ask this question, the first thing that I always hear, weapons, right? The association that a lot of people have with the dark web is all the illegal stuff that you can buy, and one of the illegal things that you can buy are weapons. The other thing is, of course, drugs. Right? Who had that? Yes? A lot of you? Good. Then the other thing is, of course, all the other stuff that you might want to have and own, or you think it's cool to have one, which is a submarine, for example, or a tank, or a MiG-21, or whatever it is. All these things you can probably buy on the dark web. But that's not really why we as IntSights are actually monitoring the dark web for you, because we're not really interested in that part of the world. And also from an attacker's perspective, it's also not the thing that they think is most important. What for an attacker is most important is anonymity. So that they can just do whatever the hell they want without being known, without being able to track. And just for the people that don't know what dark web or Tor is, for that matter, very brief overview. It's basically a network of proxies. So you enter the Tor network in an entry node, you're being bounced around different proxies, and then you end up on an exit node, and then the exit node has no idea what your IP address, what your IP address was all the way at the beginning. So you could potentially be quite anonymous if you're also serving the normal web. And a lot of people do that these days. For example, if you want to buy a plane ticket and you're going through your normal browser and you have all your cookies there, the price will be X. And if you flush your cookies, for example, the price might be something completely different. So it can also have a nice benefit effect if you want to save some money on that way. But the whole idea behind it is anonymity. And also because of that, you can pretty much be anybody you want on the dark web. All the way in the beginning, the internet, when it came, people said, well, you never know if who's being a dog on the internet, right? You could always be pretending to be someone else. Now, those days are almost gone. As soon as you're at home or behind your phone, people know who you are every single moment of the time. They know where you are, where you live, who you are, because if there's a problem, they have to talk to law enforcement in order to say, okay, this person did this. But on the dark web or Tor or any other type of network, you can still be whoever you want. So you can be Darth Vader if you want. It's all very anonymous, and you actually never know who you're dealing with. And that then also sparks the problem with the dark web and also the association that people have with that, is that it's a criminal hub. It's a criminal activity hub. So you can rent a hacker. You can look for an insider. So any type of criminal activity you probably want to do, you can find someone that will do it on the dark web. Now that's all the bad stuff. There's also some good things with the dark web. And it's also one of the things that I think it should not go away. Because the other thing that it can also allow you to do is if you're in a regime where you need anonymity and there's censor and anything like that, then Tor or Tor-like networks can provide you a way to communicate with the outside world without being impacted on your freedom, for example. So there's a lot of hacktivist groups there. There's a lot of sources for journalists to dump information on anonymous sites, all post Wikipedia or WikiLeaks type services. So there's also some good things there. It's not all bad. It's the minority, but still. So we've done this. What is being sold on the dark web? The weapons, the drugs, and the tanks. But what else is there? What else is there that you need to know about so that you can protect your environment, that you can protect your organization, your employees, and your infrastructure? Because that's what it's pretty much all about. Obvious one is credit cards, right? Credit cards are being sold en masse from different banks, different vendors, sometimes even with money on there. For every single financial institution that is our customer or that we do an evaluation with, we will always find credit cards that are being sold or credit cards that are being dumped. So some sources or some forums are just there for where people can just dump credit cards. You can just get them, start using them. So that's a big problem. So the way that you can use this information is that if you know that that is happening, one of the things that we can provide as IntSights is we have analysts available that can also do all sorts of additional services and not only notifying you that this is happening, but we can also help you deal with the problem, right? So one of the things that you might want to know about this is, Let's say it's, I mentioned HSBC already, just as an example. Let's say we've identified credit card numbers of HSBC, of you as a customer. So one of the things that you will then see is a list of credit cards that says, okay, these are all HSBC premium credit cards, prepaid credit cards. So one of the things that we can do is we can actually go to the seller and say, okay, give us a sample of those credit cards, so that our customer can actually validate if these credit cards are theirs. And if they're theirs, we can also help our customer to buy the credit cards. Usually they're not that expensive, but then at least you have the numbers, and then our customer can destroy them so that they cannot harm them even more. So that's it's a very simple thing, but it can be very, very effective. Another thing that you will find on the dark web is DDoS services. We had a lot of web stressors that were also available on the clear web that you can test your website. A lot of these got taken down the other day, but there's still services and botnets that are being used to run these services. And then you end up with a website like this and it's no longer available. So, and that can happen in two different ways. One is that these services are being sold, of course, but what can also happen is that we can identify IP addresses or domains that are part of a list that are being attacked, or that will be attacked for however the reason is. Can be on a target list, for example. So that if you know that your domain or that your IP address is on that list, you might want to put some things in place already to consume the DDoS that you might get. Simple things, but very effective. Another things are being sold are accounts, so similar to credit card numbers, but also just bank account numbers that even can be filled with money that you can buy for minimal amount of money. So if we identify those, again, you can close those accounts so that they can no longer do any damage to the organization. Other things, of course, are documents. And we don't see this very often, not when they're being sold, but they're usually being dumped. And one of the things that we can do based on the information that we have of our clients is actually look for documents that have their company name in there, maybe brands, maybe different product names or product codes. Maybe there's like some internal secret, your eyes only, for example, these type of phrases, so that we can identify those. Or someone can just say, hey, I've got a bunch of internal documentation or internal email conversations of company XYZ. Here it is, or you can buy this. One of the more interesting things that we can also see, or that you can also find on the dark web, are hacking tutorials. For example, this was, I think, for free flight upgrades, for example. But it can also be how you can make free calls with a prepaid card, or how you can use different coupon codes to enable certain services, or whatever the tutorial might be that could harm an organization. And then, of course, more the obvious things is that if you want to launch any type of attack from a more phishing or malware type campaign, you need also an infrastructure for that. You need a website, you might need some email capabilities, and these are being sold on the web. You don't need any knowledge these days to just launch an attack or launch a malware campaign against an organization. It's all very cheap. Also, DDoS is very cheap. And then the more interesting parts are when people are looking for insiders in organization. So this is one of the ways that Addison Mashley was being targeted. Someone was looking for an insider in that organization for certain access. And that happens on a bi-regular basis, where people are going, hey, I'm looking for an insider in Bank of America, or an insider in BMW, or whatever the organization might be for whatever the purpose. So those are some of the things that you can then identify and that you can see, and that is also being offered and sold on the dark web. And of course, hacking service in general. So, hey, I need this website to be taken down, or I'm interested in credentials of that specific organization. So there's a lot of things or a lot of services that people offer in regards to that. And one of the things that we also do is not just analyze this on a continuous basis. As IntSights, we also engage with threat actors that we've identified. So the other day on Dream Market, we got in contact with a threat actor. It was by the time when there was a lot of new credential leaks being dumped, collection number 1 through 5, if people remember, millions and millions or billions of different credentials. But at that same time, there were also other credential